Welcome to the deep dive, where we like to kind of dig into these complex topics and try to pull out the good stuff, the
The
gems,
nuggets of wisdom, right?
the nuggets, the golden nuggets. I like that. So today we are exploring the idea of, what it means to become quote unquote supernatural,
Hmm.
and not so much like the spooky ghost stories, but more like the extraordinary abilities that we might all have just waiting to be unlocked.
It's a very intriguing concept, and it's something that a lot of people are really drawn to.
For sure. And our source material today is a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza called Becoming Supernatural. And in it, he brings together a bunch of different things like neuroscience and mystical experiences and tries to kind of explain how we can actually create real change in our lives.
Yeah, and he uses some really incredible real-life examples of people who've been able to do these amazing things, and it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and one of the stories that really stands out is about a woman named Anna, who's a successful psychiatrist living in Amsterdam. And her life takes a really dramatic turn when her husband just up and leaves her and their family.
Right, and that's where you start to see this very powerful connection between the mind and the body, because when you go through something traumatic like that, it can really impact your health.
And there's more and more medical research that's showing this, that chronic stress can actually change our genes and make us more vulnerable to disease.
And that's exactly what happened to Anna.
Mm.
She started out with fibromyalgia, and then she developed thyroid disease, and then eventually she even had a stroke. So it's like a cascade of health problems, all stemming from that initial trauma.
So it really highlights how interconnected our emotional well-being and our physical well-being are.
Oh, absolutely. When we're under stress for long periods of time, our bodies produce an excess of hormones like cortisol. And over time, that can really wreak havoc on our systems.
So it sounds like Anna's story is kind of a tragic one,
Yeah.
but it doesn't actually end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. Through the techniques that she learned in becoming supernatural, she started to consciously shift her emotional state and she began replacing those negative feelings like fear and resentment with more positive ones like joy and gratitude.
And this is where the science of epigenetics comes into play, right? I mean, I've heard this term before, but I'm not really sure I fully understand it.
Well, essentially, what epigenetics tells us is that our genes aren't fixed. Our environment and our lifestyle choices and even our thoughts and feelings can influence how our genes express themselves. It's like a dimmer switch that can turn the volume up or down on certain genes.
So you're saying that our emotions can actually send signals to our genes and switch some on and some off.
That's right. And in Anna's case, by changing her emotional state, she was able to reverse her illnesses and she completely turned her health around.
That's remarkable. So it really does all come back to the idea that our bodies are deeply connected to our thoughts and feelings. And when we experience positive emotions, it actually triggers the release of chemicals and hormones that help us heal. But when we're stuck in negativity, it can do the opposite.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to learn how to manage our thoughts and emotions.
So how do we escape those negative thought patterns when they seem so ingrained in us? I mean, it's like they're on autopilot sometimes.
Well, Dispenza talks about this thing called the thinking-feeling loop, which is basically this cycle where our thoughts create feelings, and then those feelings reinforce the thoughts. And it can be really hard to break free from.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But he does offer some solutions, right?
He does. He compares it to practicing a piano exercise.
Yeah.
Even if you're not physically playing the piano, just mentally rehearsing, the movements can strengthen those neural pathways in your brain. So in a way, it's like training your mind.
It's like athletes who visualize themselves performing perfectly before a big competition. They're essentially creating those neural pathways for success.
Precisely. Our brains don't always distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So if we can consistently think and feel a desired outcome, even if it hasn't happened yet, it starts to pave the way for it to become reality.
That's pretty powerful stuff. So how can our listeners apply this in their own lives?
Well, I think the first step is to become aware of the areas where you might be caught in a negative thinking, feeling loop. What are those thoughts that keep popping up that make you feel bad?
And once you've identified those thoughts, then what?
Yeah, and you can start to challenge them and replace them with more positive and empowering ones. And Dispenza suggests that one of the keys to doing this is to tap into something called the quantum field.
Okay, now you're going to have to explain this one because I think I've heard of the quantum field, but I'm not sure I really get it.
Well, basically, it's this realm of infinite possibilities. And it's not as woo-woo as it sounds. It actually draws on principles of quantum physics, which suggests that our consciousness can actually interact with this field to shape our reality.
So you're saying that we can actually create our own reality?
In a way, yes, Dispenza breaks it down into two key elements. The first is clear intention, so that's knowing exactly what you want. And the second is elevated emotion. So that's feeling the joy of having it as if it were already real. It's about shifting from a state of wanting to a state of being.
It's like that saying, act as if.
Exactly. And Dispenza shares a story in the book about a man named Peter who used these principles to overcome a debilitating illness. He focused his intention on healing, and he visualized himself being healthy and vibrant, and he cultivated a feeling of gratitude for that health as if it was already his.
Wow, and what happened?
Well, Peter's story is a powerful example of how our internal state can create tangible changes in our external reality. He actually ended up healing himself.
That's amazing. So this concept can be applied to all sorts of things, right? Not just physical health, but also our relationships, our finances, our creativity.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we have more power to shape our lives than we often realize.
So this brings us to another really interesting part of Dispenza's work, which is the 7 energy centers, or what are often called chakras.
Right. Now, chakras are often talked about in spiritual traditions, but what Dispenza does is he bridges the gap between spirituality and science. He explains how these energy centers actually correspond to specific nerve plexuses and glands in the body. So they're not just some mystical concept, they have a real physical basis.
That makes sense. So these energy centers are actually connected to different parts of our nervous system, and they influence our emotions, our thoughts, and even our physical well-being.
That's right. And Dispenza introduces a really powerful meditation called the Blessing of the Energy Centers, which is designed to activate and balance these centers.
So it's like we're fine-tuning our energy system to create more harmony in our bodies and our minds.
Yeah. And he believes that when our chakras are balanced, our energy can flow more freely, and we experience greater health and well-being and even expanded consciousness.
So this leads us to maybe the most mysterious and fascinating part of our deep dive, which is the pineal gland.
Often referred to as the third eye, the pineal gland has intrigued people for centuries. It's located deep within the brain, and it produces melatonin, which regulates our sleep-wake cycles.
Right. But some researchers believe that it might have a much bigger role to play than just regulating our sleep.
Exactly. Some believe it could be a gateway to higher states of awareness, and Dispenza delves into this in the book.
So what did he say about it?
Well, he explains that there are specific breathing techniques that can actually stimulate and activate the pineal gland, and these techniques could potentially open us up to experiences beyond our normal senses.
That's fascinating. And he talks about people who've actually had these experiences, right?
He does. He shares stories from his workshops about people who have had these incredible experiences during these practices, from profound healing to a feeling of interconnectedness with everything around them.
Wow. It makes you wonder what other abilities are lying dormant within us.
hmm
What if we have the potential to unlock perceptions and experiences that we never thought possible?
It's a very exciting thought, and it's one that we'll explore further as we continue our deep dive into becoming supernatural. So stay with us as we unpack more of Dispenza's fascinating insights.
Okay, so welcome back to our exploration of becoming supernatural.
Yeah.
We've covered some pretty mind-blowing concepts so far, like rewiring our brains and the power of the quantum field. It's like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Yeah, we've really just dipped our toes into the deep end of human potential.
But let's get a little more practical here.
Yeah.
What are some specific techniques that Dispenza offers to help us actually tap into these extraordinary states?
One of the most intriguing ones is the Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation, which is specifically designed to activate and balance those 7 chakras we talked about.
Okay, so I'll be honest. When I first heard about chakras, I was kind of skeptical.
Hmm.
It all sounded a bit too, out there for me.
I get it. It's easy to dismiss chakras as something purely spiritual. But what I find fascinating is how Dispenza bridges the gap between spirituality and science. He explains that these energy centers actually correspond to specific nerve plexuses and glands in our physical bodies.
So it's not just about energy in some vague sense, but actual tangible connections within our nervous system.
Exactly. And these centers can influence everything from our emotions and thought patterns to our organ function and even our immune system.
Wow, okay, that makes it a lot more understandable. So how does this blessing of the energy centers meditation actually work?
Well, it involves a combination of focused attention, clear intention, and elevated emotion. You start by bringing your awareness to each chakra, beginning at the base of your spine and moving upwards to the crown of your head.
And so for each chakra, you're basically directing a blessing towards it.
Right, you infuse each center with a specific intention and emotion. For example, with the root chakra, which is associated with safety and security, you might visualize a vibrant red light and repeat an affirmation like, I am grounded and supported.
So it's like a mix of guided visualization and affirmations, but with this deeper energetic component.
Yeah. And the key is to really embody the feeling that's associated with each chakra. It's not just about saying the words, but about cultivating that actual feeling of safety, security, or whatever quality you're focusing on.
It's like that idea that energy flows where attention goes. So by focusing our attention and intention on these energy centers, we're actually directing energy toward them and creating a shift in our internal state.
And that shift in energy can have a ripple effect on our physical bodies, too.
Hmm,
Dispenza shares some pretty compelling stories of people who have experienced healing from things like chronic pain, anxiety, and even serious illnesses just by doing this practice.
that's amazing. So it sounds like it's not just about feeling better emotionally, but also creating real physical changes.
Exactly. And he also talks about how balancing the chakras can help us tap into our creative potential and experience a deeper sense of spiritual connection.
So it's about becoming more whole, more aligned.
That's a good way to put it. And a key element of this meditation is learning to access and influence the autonomic nervous system.
Oh, right, the part of our nervous system that controls all those automatic functions like our heartbeat and breathing.
Exactly. And by learning to consciously influence this system, which is usually outside of our direct control, we can potentially create some pretty profound changes in our physiology and even our gene expression.
So it's like we're harnessing our body's innate ability to heal and regulate itself.
Right. And what's really cool is that there's a growing body of research that supports these ideas. Scientists are finding more and more evidence for the mind-body connection and the power of practices like meditation to influence our physical and emotional well-being.
So it's not just anecdotal evidence. There are actual measurable physiological changes happening.
Exactly. Dispenza and his team have done studies using brain imaging, heart rate variability measurements, and even gene expression analysis.
Wow, and what have they found?
They've observed some significant changes in brainwave patterns, a decrease in stress hormones, and an increase in indicators of well-being in people who regularly practice these meditations.
That's pretty impressive. So it really seems like we have a much greater capacity to influence our internal state and by extension our external reality than we often give ourselves credit for.
I think so. And, speaking of expanding our reality, let's talk about those pineal gland activation techniques we mentioned earlier. I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, me too. This is where things get really interesting. So
Yeah.
just to recap, the pineal gland is this tiny gland in the brain that produces melatonin, which regulates our sleep cycles.
Right. But Dispenza proposes that it could have a much greater potential than just that.
Like it could be a gateway to higher states of awareness.
Exactly. And he describes these very specific breathing techniques that he believes can stimulate and activate the pineal gland. And he suggests that these techniques might allow us to access experiences that go beyond our five senses.
Okay, so what kind of experiences are we talking about here?
People who have tried these techniques have reported all sorts of things, from subtle tingling sensations in the head to vivid visions and even this profound feeling of interconnectedness with the universe.
Wow, it really makes you wonder what else is possible. What hidden abilities might we have that are just waiting to be unlocked?
It's a very exciting thought. And Dispenza suggests that activating the pineal gland could enhance our intuition, boost our creativity, and even strengthen our connection to a greater intelligence or consciousness. He believes there's still so much we don't know about this mysterious gland.
It's like we're stepping outside the boundaries of our everyday perception and exploring this whole new realm of possibility.
And it's not just about having these extraordinary experiences. Dispenza emphasizes that these insights can actually translate into real changes in our lives. Deeper relationships, a stronger sense of purpose, and a more fulfilling life overall.
So we've covered some pretty powerful techniques for personal transformation here. From the blessing of the energy centers, meditation, to these pineal gland activations. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that we need to explore, and that's the concept of time. How can we transcend our linear experience of time to create a more expansive life? That's what we'll dive into in part 3 of our deep dives. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into becoming supernatural. And I got to say, this has been a really wild ride so far.
Yeah, we've been through a lot, haven't we? From rewiring our brains to tapping into the quantum field. It's a lot to take in.
It is. And now we're going to tackle a concept that might be the most mind-bending yet, time.
Yeah, time. It's something we all experience but rarely stop to really think about.
Right? I mean, most of us experience time in a pretty linear way, past, present, future.
Mhm.
Like a straight line we're traveling along.
It's like we're on this conveyor belt just moving through time.
Exactly. But what if, as Dispenza suggests, that linear perception of time is really just a construct of our limited three-dimensional reality?
What if there's a more expansive way to experience time, a way that allows us to tap into a realm of infinite possibilities?
That's a really intriguing idea.
Mm.
So how does Dispenza explain this?
Well, he delves into things like quantum physics and mystical experiences to explore how we can transcend our everyday linear experience of time. He actually uses the analogy of a movie reel.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Each frame of the movie represents a moment in time, and when we watch the film, it appears as this seamless flow, creating the illusion of linear time.
Right. But if you were to stop the projector and focus on just one frame, you wouldn't be caught up in that flow anymore. You'd be fully present in that single moment.
Exactly, and that's the key. When we become truly present, we step outside the constraints of linear time and tap into what Dispenza calls the quantum field.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That realm where all possibilities exist simultaneously. We talked about that earlier.
Yes, and Dispenza suggests that we can access this field not only through deep meditation, but also by shifting our relationship to time in our daily lives.
So how do we actually do that? How do we break free from that tyranny of the clock and experience this more expansive reality?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions,
Yeah.
especially those that keep us dwelling in the past or worrying about the future.
It's like catching yourself when your mind starts time traveling and gently bringing it back to the present moment.
Right. And he also talks about the power of gratitude. When we focus on what we're grateful for, we shift our energy from lack to abundance, from fear to love.
And that shift in energy helps us align with a reality where time is not a limitation, but a field of infinite potential.
Exactly. And Dispenza even suggests that we can use our imagination to create our future, not by forcing outcomes, but by embodying the feelings of our desired reality as if it were already happening.
That sounds a lot like the act as if principle we talked about earlier.
It is very similar. And he introduces this practice called the walking meditation, where you bring yourself into a deep meditative state, and then you walk while embodying the energy and emotions of your future self.
So you're basically walking as if you've already achieved your goals and dreams.
Exactly. It's about really feeling the joy, the success, the fulfillment as if it were already happening, even before it manifests in the physical world.
And Dispenza shares stories of people who've used this technique to create some pretty remarkable changes in their lives, right?
Oh, yeah. He talks about people healing from illness, achieving their goals, finding love. It's really inspiring.
It's like these stories remind us that we're not just passive bystanders in our own lives. We're active creators of our reality.
And by shifting our relationship with time, we can unlock a whole new level of freedom and possibility.
It's really quite empowering. So as we wrap up our deep dive into becoming supernatural, I think it's safe to say that we've uncovered some pretty incredible ideas about the nature of reality and our place within it.
We've explored the power of the mind to heal, to activate our energy centers, and to tap into that quantum field.
We've learned that time might not be as rigid as we perceive it to be, but rather a fluid field that we can influence with our consciousness.
And perhaps most importantly, we've realized that we have the power to create a more extraordinary and fulfilling life than we ever imagined.
I think that's a great takeaway. Dispenza's work is a call to awaken to our true potential, to embrace the unknown, and to step into a reality where limitations are self-imposed.
It's an invitation to embark on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation, and I encourage everyone listening to explore these ideas further and see where they lead you.
Well said. And remember, the power to become supernatural lies within each and every one of us. All we have to do is unlock it. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring.